This week on Quadriga, social democracy, new life in an old idea? Globalization and the financial crisis have triggered waves of left-wing protests all over the world. And in lots of countries, socialists and social democrats have been voted into power. Germany's Social Democrats want to get back into power in the country's elections in September. Their history goes back a long way. The party is now celebrating its 150th anniversary. Will they win back voters with the old ideas of equality? Or does social democracy today mean something very different? Have political parties been left behind? Your host today, Ali Aslan.
Hello and welcome to Quadriga. The German Social Democratic Party is celebrating its 150th anniversary, and we want to take this opportunity to look at the state and future of social democracy, not just in Germany, but also Europe and beyond. And we will do so together with three guests. Welcome to Alan Posener, who is a correspondent and commentator for the German daily Die Welt and Welt am Sonntag. He's also one of Germany's most influential bloggers. Ursula Weidenfeld works as a freelance journalist and columnist based in Berlin and Potsdam. Previously, she was a business correspondent for the Tagesspiegel and Financial Times Germany. And Laura Lucchini is an Italian journalist based in Berlin, where she writes for various newspapers such as the Italian L'Inchiesta and the Argentinian newspaper La Nación. Welcome to you all. Alan Posener, 150 years of social democracy in Germany. And the celebration comes at a time when we in Europe and beyond live in a financial state of crisis. Isn't that the case? Yet if we look at the poll numbers, currently the Social Democratic Party in Germany stands at approximately 29%. They should be profiting from this financial crisis, but they aren't. How do you explain that?
Well, it's the same all over Europe. It's not just in Germany. They got elected in France, but now François Hollande is down in the dumps, more unpopular than Sarkozy ever was. Yes, and you would think that with capitalism sort of running against the wall, neoliberalism really screwing up, they should be on top, but they aren't. I think there are probably several reasons, but I think one thing is that their whole mode of operation is defensive. They're saying no more cuts or less cuts or stuff like that, less austerity. They don't have a vision of their own. And when someone like Angela Merkel comes and says there is no alternative, the old Tina mode of Maggie Thatcher, people sort of grit their teeth and say, okay, let's go through with it. So I think what's missing with social democracy all over the place is, where are you going? You just want less austerity isn't really something that grabs people's imagination.
Ursula Weidenfeld, Alan Posener alluded to it. Not only are the Social Democrats in Europe not profiting, they're actually losing elections in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain, all governments that have fallen victim to the financial crisis. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I think it has to do with that Social Democrats do not have different answers to the crisis than the Conservatives have. So why should you vote for them? And the other thing is that I think that the protest movements against capitalism, against crisis, they are more or less beyond the parliaments and beyond the parties. They are just web movements, Occupy, they are on the street, but they do not just pay something in the social democratic idea or in the parties.
And Laura Lucchini, the banks have been bailed out by taxpayers' money, billions of dollars being spent, widespread sense of unfairness.
I disagree with Ursula, because I think these people protesting in the street, they should have a representation. They are looking for it and they don't find it. And the other problem is that the conservatives in Europe now are changing more quickly than the social democrats are able to do. Look at Germany. I mean, Angela Merkel is doing social democratic policies in some fields, and they are not able to create new issues, to create new arguments to fight against. So the question is, if in Germany the conservatives are no more conservative, why does Germany need the social democrat?
Would you say, Alan Posner, then that Social Democrats have fallen victim to their own success, if you will, that their platform has been so appealing that it has been hijacked by the center-right, basically?
That's definitely, for Germany, certainly, I think, very true. Angela Merkel is a mistress of Machiavellist policy. She, I think also they are fall victim to the fact that they're so responsible. I mean, you think of Tony Blair in Britain with New Labour. He led Britain into the Iraq War out of a feeling of responsibility for the West, the Western Alliance, and so on. And of course that cost him. You think of Gerhard Schröder with Agenda 2010, out of a responsibility for reforming Germany to be viable in the world markets. Now, you can think about about those reforms whatever you like, but it was a feeling of responsibility, and it cost him. So I think, yes, on the one hand, there's that, and on the other hand, there's this feeling that the Social Democrats, when they're in power, they do the right thing, and the voters hate them for it.
But I think perhaps it has to do something with the disappearance of a working class. If you just declare the whole country as middle class persons and people, you have to do something like a middle class policy and have middle-class parties. And if you look at the parts of the world where there are real working classes or working poor, you have a completely different picture of social democratic parties, of social democrats, socialists who are in governments.
Yeah, the basis has changed. I mean, many editorials wrote in these days that the Social Democrats in Germany have lost their basis, but I think the basis is changed. There are working poor and there is a middle class. They both should be like hypothetical voters for the SPD, but their interests are really far away, and the SPD is not able, it hasn't been able until now to find a compromise.
So would you say then that the social democratic ideals, such as defense of the welfare state, if you will, the aid for weaker members of society, they've all become obsolete?
I don't think so, but I think that the Social Democrats do not have an idea how to address social democratic issues any longer. They always say, well, we don't want to do austerity policy, but in the end they say, yes, there is no alternative, so we are going with the majority of the parliaments.
And I think it's interesting that the most social democratic leader in the world today, or at least in the Western world, is Barack Obama, who is nominally not a social democrat at all. I mean, he's doing Keynesian economics in the United States. He's throwing money at the problems. He's trying to do the old, create jobs with state money, reform the infrastructure. I mean, he's not succeeding. That has to do with political gridlock in the United States. But this idea of, yes, we can, and we can change America, it was there. He's the only leader I can think of in the last 10 years who produced a social democratic vision for his country,
but
if you will.
I think that this is some kind of question of leadership. If you look at Great Britain, it seems to be Cameron who pretends to be one of the persons who just forms a big society or doing things to have some new ideas for the society. And perhaps that is not just connected to social democracy or to be a socialist, but it is to leadership, to just persons who pretend to be the new idea of policy.
That is an issue that is also focusing this anniversary, because just yesterday was founded the Progressive Alliance, which is the alternative proposal of the German SPD to the International Socialists. And this new alliance should include also the Democratic Party in the United States. So there's a step toward that. But still, I think maybe it's not the best thing, because I think the future of Social Democrats should be more left than more center and more. But I don't know, maybe.
I disagree entirely. I think this formation of the Progressive Alliance is one of the big news. And this formation of a transatlantic alliance, Europe was social democratic and America was sort of liberal capitalist. And now it's changing. These parties are moving to the right in Europe, and Obama's moved the Democratic Party to the left. And I think that's a good thing. And then it's a case of someone formulating, that vision here and those programs and breaking through this idea that there is no alternative and saying, we can do this, we can do that, we should do this. And maybe also going back to the original idea of New Labour, Tony Blair's vision, which was abandoned.
But do you think that social democrats in Europe, in the US or in Latin America have so much in common to just form these new alliances? I always thought that the Socialist International is something like a traditional thing. Everybody just thinks about 150 years of common history and things like that. But the point that they do not have any influence today is just, for me, something like the proof that there is no such thing like a common, like a socialistic international initiative, which is ready to just make real politics.
Of course, this change, this new alliance, maybe will find a way, is looking for that way. And of course, the International Socialist is old and hasn't been able to produce any decision or result in the last years. But still, if you look to Latin America and you tell them that the Social Democratic Party in Germany is a left party, they don't believe it. I mean,
even the Greeks were upset about the idea of just having something like a new alliance.
For me, the main thing was that the Socialist International contained all sorts of so-called anti-imperialist parties. For instance, the party of Hosni Mubarak was in there. I mean, they were allied with dictators, because they were anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist. Yeah. So what they're doing now is they're saying, I hope they're saying, we want to be allied with parties which are for true democracy, including social democracy, to bring, and if they don't have to be socialist parties, but they should be socially progressive. But they mustn't, even if they call themselves socialists, but they're dictatorships, then they're out. Now that is, I think, a great step forward.
Yep.
And the German leader of the Social Democrats, Sigmar Gabriel, has indeed blamed the Social International for not being able to find answers to the financial crisis and other global challenges. The question is, do you think that this so-called progressive alliance is now the answer to that?
Well, we do not have anything what this alliance should say in the future, so we don't know whether they have answers or whether the answers are different from the answers before. We don't know it.
And indeed, it's not just the Progressive Alliance, or rather the Socialist International, that has changed, but the Social Democrats also, in their 150 anniversaries, will look at their history and how much they have changed, how much change they have undergone. Let's have a quick look.
The roots of Germany's Social Democrats go back to 1863, a party set up by Ferdinand Lassalle based on ideas of equality and power for workers. They've had periods in government, periods in opposition, and periods of being banned and persecuted. They were banned by the Nazis after being the only party to vote against the law that stripped Parliament of its powers and gave Hitler complete control. In the late 1960s, the party were back in power. Under Willy Brandt as Chancellor, the welfare state grew and relations with the Eastern Bloc improved. In 1998, Germany had another Social Democrat in charge. Gerhard Schröder's plans involved cuts to welfare and workers' rights to create a more flexible labour market. The changes weren't popular, and that's a legacy that still hangs over the party as it goes into the elections later this year. As ever, the SPD is battling to decide what it stands for, continuing to change itself as it hopes to change the country.
Well, Alan Posner, we just saw a brief history of the Social Democratic Party in Germany. Would you say that the party has been able to adapt to changing times?
Well, yes, in a way it has. I mean, what we saw there was that this party really has been the mainstay of German democracy. It formed the Weimar Republic. It fought against Hitler. In Germany after 1945, it fought for the so-called Neue Ostpolitik, the new policy towards the East, and for Willy Brandt's slogan, let's try more democracy. So it's always been a political organization. It's never been just about workers' rights or more pay. It's never been just a bigger trade union. I think one of the problems now today is where is the big political question that they can sort of rally around? Because, as you've said, Merkel has sort of occupied all the other fields. So what are they doing? They seem to be like a party in search of a program and in search of the big question, and they're not finding it.
Well, I think the big question is the future of capitalism, of something like a new economic order, and there they don't have any answers. They do not even have an idea how to come along, to go along, and to just win all the protesters on the streets, the young protesters who are in the internet and who go with Occupy and with We Are the 99%.
And we just saw in the film, former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, and he's very much credited now in the aftermath for Germany's economic success, current success, due to the so-called Agenda 2010, which completely overhauled the German social system, if you will. Do you think he's getting enough credit for that?
Well, I think that...
Do you think the Social Democrats are getting enough credit for that?
He's getting credit, but from the wrong side. So he doesn't. The Social Democrats do not profit from that. In Germany, we say always, if you want to do social reforms, you need a social democratic government, and if you want to change the marriage conditions for homosexuals, you have to. A conservative government has to do it. So both sides will not get any credit from their voters, from their just classes to do the reforms, but they will get it from the wrong side.
Laura Lucchini, indeed, Gerhard Schröder very much received a lot of criticism from within his own party to this day.
Yeah, because I mean, on one hand, this agenda is like celebrated as one of the main reason of the miracle of occupation right now in Germany. But on the other hand, there are studies that shows that the social difference increased since this agenda was introduced. So, of course, there's a part of the SPD really criticizing this agenda and saying that it was a betrayal of the SPD to his own guys, his own spirit. I don't think so. In that moment, it was really necessary. Of course, can be modified. There are things that can be improved, but still, this division inside the party shows the problems. It is exactly the problem right now with the Social Democrats.
We have one also structural problem within Europe, and that is simply the fact that it's different being a young person in Spain or Italy, for instance, or being a young person in Germany, with I don't know, something incredible like 60% unemployed youth in Spain, 40% in Italy, 70% in Greece, whereas in Germany unemployment is going down to almost zero. So what does a social democratic politician say to voters in Germany who don't want to do what an internationalist socialist party should do, namely give something to Southern Europe? They can't really do that. They ought to be in favor of Eurobonds. They ought to be in favor of a Marshall Plan for Europe financed by German capitalism. But of course they're not going to say that, because that would be death. So there's another problem in that there is no such thing really as a progressive international, even on a European base, because our situation is so incredibly different.
Yeah, the problem is that, I mean, everybody in Europe, all the people protesting in the street are expecting that maybe a change in the government in Germany would change something in Europe with austerity and everything, but they're wrong, because SPD is not planning to do that. I mean, they are putting the accent on growth and competitiveness, but then still they don't plan to invest more money on that, which is what South European countries are asking.
And Ursula Weidenfeld, let's look ahead to September, to the upcoming German election, and the candidate for the Social Democratic Party, Per Steinbrück, another person very much like former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, if you will, who's not really loved by his party.
And who's not really loved by people who may vote for the Social Democrats, the classic working class people or people of the new middle classes. They won't vote for him at the first time because they think that Per Steinbrück is one one who is like Gerhard Schröder, who wouldn't go for reforms in favor of working class people, who wouldn't go for more social justice or things like that. And I think one of the problems of the SPD is that Per Steinbrück has an image as Gerhard Schröder had, and probably will not be the person who just find a new warm feeling, a warm idea for social democrats. He's just seen as somebody who's technical, who is driven by numbers and by charts and things like that.
So we're looking at least 4 more years in the opposition, Alan Posener?
They could get lucky. You know, I agree totally that Steinbrück is not simpatico, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
to the classical voters of the SPD, probably he is for some other persons.
Really, I don't know anyone who likes him. But you know, but he could get lucky because there's this new anti-Euro party, the Alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland. Now, if they manage to take enough, a couple of percentage off the Free Democrats and kick them out of the Bundestag, and enough off the CDU, Steinbrück could find himself by default in
a great coalition, probably. And
it could. Don't you think? I think Red Green
and the Linke.
I think Red Green might just make it. You know, or they could find themselves in a so-called grand coalition with Merkel. He's been there before. He was finance minister. He was okay. So I don't think they have definitely 4 years in opposition in front of them. In fact, I think for them, the situation is quite, looks quite good. Either they manage to form their own government, or they're in with Merkel.
Yeah. So social democracy in Europe in general, if we look at the governments that are currently in charge, is a bit of a crisis, one would say. But if we look across the Atlantic, and I don't mean the United States, if we look at Latin America, for instance, there you have seen a revival in the past, due to the rise of figures like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and also in Bolivia and Ecuador. You have seen a rise of the left. Do you think that could serve as a role model for Europe?
For example, Ecuador is quite a modern model of a country with, which is open to markets and which is like a moderate liberal economic point of view, but still is really social and managed to reduce poverty, and it's on the right path. And I think, Rafael Correa was traveling in Europe, but for example in Berlin didn't have meetings with the SPD, but with Die Linke. I think for the Latin American left-wing parties, still Die Linke is the partner and not the SPD. So there's still a lot to do to go in that direction. But then you have other examples, for example, Brazil, which has a liberal economy and then a really social focus policies. And I think that is the way that can build a bridge between Europe and Latin America. I don't see that the European left wing could take advantage of other movements like Venezuela and Argentinian left wing parties.
The trouble with Chavez is he's not a leftist; he's a populist who just redistributes oil money, which doesn't belong to him, to keep his party in power. That is really, really, awful. But I agree that Lula in Brazil did something really new for Latin America. It's unfortunate that his party now is being engulfed in corruption. He really was something different from the old left-wing caudillo of Latin American politics.
I think the difference may be that in Latin America we do have charismatic leaders who just take the government and just make people to vote for them. Whether in Europe we do see more elderly people who just have been in responsibility 2 or 3 times before, and nobody would just think that they will be able to make the turn for the economy and the society. I think it has a lot to do with the leadership and with the ability to promise your society a better life and just make people believe that you will just deliver.
And would you also say that part of the Social Democrats, in particular in Germany perhaps, is that we in Europe and Germany have taken a particular social standard for granted?
Well, I think we do not have severe problems in Germany, and that is always a problem for just people who are for more justice and who want to have change and who promise to go for the working for the poor people. So if you don't have real problems, you just have few possibilities to convince people.
So how much of the social democratic ideals, Alan Posner, the defense of the welfare state, social justice, equal opportunity, the aid for weaker members of society, how much is that still valid in the 21st century? More than ever, or perhaps more in a waning state?
No, more than ever, actually, because every revolution is a revolution of rising expectations. You have to create those rising expectations. We have so much going for us, so many opportunities. We have such a well-educated population. We're an industrial state and so on. So there's a possibility to say we could be, we don't need to have any poor people. We don't need to have people who are uneducated. We don't need to have immigrants who are not integrated. We can use them to create a German dream. There's a whole sort of yes we can there waiting to be tapped. And so I think, and it's necessary to tap it because we don't want people, to lose it. And the lost generation in Southern Europe, it's a tragedy. I mean, it's something that shouldn't happen in the 21st century. People should not be sitting around in Greece, young people.
That would mean that elderly people had to be ready to just cut their privileges. And they won't do that in Germany, they won't do that in Spain or in Greece. It is not only thinking of there is a lost generation. It has a lot to do with elderly people in the society who try to defend their privileges and their state of living. And if you look at just shrinking societies which do not have enough young people to make a difference and to make them to expect something from the elderly people in a society, you won't have a change.
No, it's true.
Look at Italy with the 38% of young unemployment, and still after a year of tragical government of Berlusconi and after a technical government, still the Democratic Party didn't manage to form a government, to win. As a matter of fact, the election, I mean, they ended up forming a government with Berlusconi, which was the public enemy number one. And so I think the people in Italy just don't understand why the Democratic Party wasn't able to cut the privileges of a political class, which is old, and at the end defends the same interests of Silvio Berlusconi. And that there's a huge disappointing feeling in Italy toward the left-wing party. And I think it will disappear after this disaster.
And the schizophrenic behavior on the part of voters, Alan Posner, can also be seen not just in Italy and beyond as well in other countries. So this schizophrenia, if you will, on the part of the voter, on the one hand being overly critical or increasingly critical of market capitalism, on the other hand yet not confiding, not trusting in social democracy.
Well, it's like Ursula said, I mean, if you're a member, if you've got a job, you want to keep the job. So the trade unions say keep the job. And if that means that you're not letting young people in, then people say so be it. So I think there's a counterintuitive thing to be done if you're a social democrat. It's open up the labour markets, yet do what Gerhard Schröder actually started doing, make it easier to hire and fire, then young people will come in. Now you have to formulate that not as how do we make it easier for capitalists to hire and fire, but how do we create opportunities for young people. And it seems to me that message hasn't been got across, that two people are voting for the Social Democrats, or not voting, people who want to keep their jobs, trade union members and so on, and the young people are seeing that they're not doing anything for them, so they stay away. And so I think, they have to really, as we say in German, jump over their own shadow to create a new vision, not based on excluding these people, but including them.
But including them means to cut privileges, to
Yes.
take away security from people who are members and who are part of the existing systems. So if you do that, you will have resistance from that side, and you have to overcome it or to lose elections, like Gerd Schröder did. So that is something of courage, and I think it's not only the problem of the Social Democrats, it's even the problem of Angela Merkel. They do not have enough courage to just make the reforms and say, well, my own future will not depend it will depend on elections, and it will not just make me just stay away from reforms which are necessary and which the country needs.
And if I understand it correctly, the dilemma is also that their main positions have been hijacked by the center-right, and some of the more radical opinions, if you will, hijacked by the center-left, which begs the question, do we still need social democratic parties?
Yes, it also does another problem, that the Social Democratic Party is a party with a lot of struggle to be, but an historical one. And while the CDU of Angela Merkel right now is more an electoral committee of the Chancellor, it's really changing a lot. I mean, and they don't have the same structure, and so that's the problem of the SPD right now. I'm really convinced that the solution is right now to win the election, to steal votes from Die Linke, because it's the only place where they can steal votes, and that they had to give a step toward left. But if I'm right, then Pierre Steinbrück maybe was the wrong candidate.
Well, I think that Social Democrats in Germany always have been the party which had something like big kickoffs for society. That was the women's rights in the 20s. It was the resistance against Adolf Hitler in the 30s. It has been the Eastern European policy, the opening to Eastern Europe, and it has been Gerd Schröder with the Agenda 2010. So probably they will be able to do a next big step, but I'm just not sure whether they will be able to do it in the next 3 months, or to promise it in the next 3 months.
What do you foresee this next big step to be?
Well, I think it has to do with capitalism and with the question, how do we want economy to be run? How do we want managers to do their jobs? How do we want to be ready for really ready for the 21st century with internet, with globalization, with free markets and the free, just free capital markets. So if we want to have it, we have to find rules which are adequate to it and to the societies in the countries. And I think that this is the one big challenge for the Social Democrats.
Do you think that is the main task for the Social Democrats in the future? Those are the big answers to give?
Well, yes and no, because I think the main challenge to social democracy is in Southern Europe, where everywhere there's a rise of neo-fascist, right-wing populist parties and left-wing populist parties, which are squeezing out. I mean, Greece, social democracy has become, it's non-existent. And there has to be a concentrated effort, helped by the Germans, to reinvent European social democracy. These are the questions they're going to have to ask and answer. But
that does not need to happen in the same party, in the old parties. It could be the lefties today, which just change in the middle of societies. That has something like that. There has been this history of social democrats in Europe all the time.
It's possible, but I still think it's really, really important that the rise of extremism in Europe be stopped. And so it is something at the centre. Left of centre and right of centre has to achieve. Otherwise, we're in really big trouble, I think.
And I think you called Barack Obama the last great social democrat, or the only social democrat currently left standing. But if we look at the United States, we've been talking about Europe for some time now, but if we look at the United States, some aspects of daily life which we in Europe have been taken for granted by now, such as universal health care, are still very much passionately, if not vigorously, debated in the United States. Is the United States sort of the blind spot for social democrats, the one continent, the one country where social democracy cannot put its foot down?
I don't think so. I mean, there are different needs, and the party answer to these needs in a different way. Of course, I don't think the United States should be a model for Europe, and in any possible way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, firstly, the United States is much more left-wing than we in Europe tend to think. I mean, in many ways, they have a nanny state. Like, I mean, there's states you can't buy alcohol. You're not allowed to drink alcohol in public. If you swear on a bus, you'll immediately have problems. They were first with smoking bans. They have a speed limit of 55 miles an hour, which no one in Germany would affect. You know, they're a very regulated society. And we tend to think of them, you know, as unbridled capitalism. That's not the case. They have some strange ideas with guns, for instance, but I do think there are things we can learn from, not the nanny state things, but the ease with which Americans change places of work and go where there is work. Spanish people are learning that now. They're coming to Germany in droves because there is no work in Spain. That's a good thing, that we can learn that from the Americans.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But I'm not sure whether the right to have a gun is something like the social democratic idea. So it has something to do with the left-wing party in the US. I think that if you look at the US, there are lots of things that are just considered as being communistic, which would be in German part of a liberal party program from the FDP, like social insurances or health insurances. I think there is some truth in your remarks that the US social democratic movement is far away from things we in the old Europe think to be heart of the social democratic ideas.
True, but on the other hand, you know, if you see action on climate change, on environmental change, which is also part of a social democratic idea.
In Germany, that has been Angela Merkel of the Conservative Party who pushed it forward and to go for it. So I think there is, they're moving targets.
I mean, she's stealing arguments to the left wing big time. We look at the right for every small child to have a place in a public structure, and also the nuclear energy that she pushed, and the minimum wage she's fighting for, and the gay marriage. I mean, all these things. She has been really very able to change. Also, maybe listen to the feeling of the population. And I think the Conservative will be in the future more and more careful with the ecological topics. And I don't exclude that in the future they could ally with the Green Party in Germany.
No mercy. No mercy for the Greens and for the Social Democrats if they just do not have any idea how to cope with this idea stealing of Angela Merkel. And I think the bill for Angela Merkel will be probably presented by the Alternative für Deutschland, more right-wing party, which arises and is against Euro and which seems to be a lot more conservative, not only in economic things, but also in just values like classical conservative values in Germany.
There's a saying in Germany, some people say people go for the original, they don't vote for the copy. But if we believe what Laura Lucchini and Ursula Weidenfeld is saying, that Chancellor Merkel is stealing or hijacking the positions of the Social Democrats, doesn't seem to hurt her.
No, well, it is hurting her on the right. She's been almost, she's had a run of luck. With the rise of the AfD, the alternative, the anti-Euro party, that luck could be running out. So I'm not so sure.
And also the votes that the FDP lost, I mean, are due to this tendency of the government. And look at the fact that Angela Merkel is present in the 150 years celebration of SPD like a backfire, you know. Konrad Adenauer didn't go. Konrad Adenauer didn't go on the 100th anniversary. So I think she's really clever to do that.
Well, Alan Posner, we're almost out of time, but I want to do a last round. 150 years of social democracy in Germany. We know what the last 150 years looked like. What do you think what the next 150 years?
I'd be happy if I could say the next 15 months, but there is a place for a centre-left party. We need that corrective. There has to be an alternative. The idea that there is no alternative means the abdication of politics. So that's their job. Formulate the alternative, and then let us. That's their job. They have to be there. So that there's a place for them. Let them fill it.
How are they going to fill it, Ursula Weinfeld, in the future?
I don't know. I think they couldn't and they can't be a party which only does more of the same. And that's the great problem of the left center at the moment.
And are you optimistic, or rather, would you say that the balance of power will shift again at some point in the near future?
Well, of course I'm optimistic. I think that the Social Democrats always, in the past, have shown that they are able to cope with the problems and that they are able to develop new ideas.
Regulating financial markets and giving hope to the young people in Europe would be like the path they have to follow. And if they manage in the next government, if they take the power, and if they manage to do that in Europe, everybody will be happy for the next 150 years.
Wow.
That is indeed. And would you say that?
No, would write history. You know, it's like an historical moment. That need a strong solution and could be.
So if I understand you all correctly, the Social Democratic Party, not just in Germany, but the movement itself, social democracy, will prevail not just for the next few months, but perhaps even the next 150 years. I want to thank my guests for their inputs, for their opinions on this occasion, which marks the 150th anniversary of social democracy in Germany. I want to thank you out there for tuning in, and looking forward to seeing you again next week for a new edition of Quadriga.